Sunday came and went harmlessly, with Alvaro staying in bed until well into the afternoon. Faustina was already off at work by then, as was their mom, leaving Alvaro with one of those Sundays that pass in a flash. The hours nameless and faceless, like a dream you aren't sure you had. If pressed for answers, Alvaro would not be able to remember what he ate or watched that day, but he could say without question that he spoke no words to anyone, and, accepting the possibility that he might have muttered something to himself, could fairly confidently say that he hadn't, in all of his waking time on Sunday, spoken even a single word. The alarm clock broke the spell of that magical Sunday at the crack of dawn Monday morning. Alvaro might have hit the snooze bar. He might have tried to fall back into the same kind of sleep, relive the same kind of dream he'd had the day before, but the sound of food frying piqued his interest. When he took a deep whiff of the smell the house had taken on, his groggy eyes opened, and he bolted up in his bed. Cigarettes, Marlboro Reds to be exact, filled the air. Without the smell of the death sticks, Alvaro still would have known who was there. The smell of too many onions frying always gave his dad away. Alvaro opened the drawer on the nightstand by his bed, took out the lock that waited there, walked out of his bedroom as quietly as possible, and put the master lock on the padlock he'd installed on the door himself several years prior. He put the shoelace that held the key around his neck and went about his day. He'd washed and dressed and ready for school completely when he walked into the living room, which was separated from the kitchen by only a countertop at which two bar stools sat, where he shared most of his meals with his mother anytime the two of them were home. But still, he kept his shirt off, opting to walk out in his vest. Why did he do that? To be tough? To show this was his home? To flaunt the key resting on his sternum like a crucifix on someone more faithful in Jesus than just trusting of his father? Morning, Junior! Joe was standing there, the perfect image of himself in his own vest and a pair of basketball shorts, the dumb rosary he wore on his neck never lining up perfectly with the one tattooed on his chest and collarbone. That's not my name, Alvaro said. Faustina, let's go! Sorry, Jojo. You got time. Grab a seat. Eat some breakfast. I made enough for everyone. Joe pulled a plate from the cabinet that hung between himself and Alvaro, causing him to have to stoop down to look at his son in the face, and served a big helping of ham and egg scramble. Did you use all the ham? I have to make that last until Thursday. Alvaro picked at his food with the fork his father laid next to the plate. There's cigarette ash in this. Sorry, Alvaro. I'll get some more. Joe made to look his son in the eye here to convey that he meant his promise, but Alvaro seemed to be immune because when the father's gaze met the son's, the eyes that he encountered were rolled hard. I can't get over that, Alvaro. The only time I heard that name growing up was right before an ass whooping. Jose Alvaro, ven para acá! Then, boom! I mean, I always deserved it, but still, it's weird to call you Alvaro. Yeah, well, I don't do Junior. And JoJo's for 8-year-olds. Alvaro didn't look up at his father. Instead, he was picking out the visible flecks of ash from his eggs. And you're Mr. Big Shit, right? I can see it, Joe said here. Alvaro didn't look up at his father, who nodded in the direction of his key. I see you turning all buff, getting rid of that soft baby fat. Alvaro looked down, noticed no difference. Not really. You just don't see it because you see yourself in the mirror every day. Joe turned here to watch the cutting board and the knife he used. No, you just don't know what you're looking at because you never see me. Alvaro was satisfied by the sight of his father stopping cold in his tracks, standing for a second a bit taller than normal, as if the words his son had spoken had shocked him. Alvaro took one more bite of the mostly ash-free eggs and grabbed the car keys from the hook on the wall. He headed to his room and grabbed his bass from its perch on the wall just in case. After locking his room, Alvaro headed for the car, holding his bass in one hand and his shirt in the other. Faustina, let's go! In the car, Alvaro clicked seek past every radio station in range twice, not caring to hear any of what was being offered. He was sitting with the body of his bass between his feet, its neck stretching up behind his head as if he were some kind of front seat cellist. Movement in the kitchen drew his attention to the window that stood between the front yard and the dining room, which stood between the window and the kitchen. Faustina ran to their father, who gave her a kiss and a hug that lifted her off the floor. In the small talk they were making, Alvaro could see that his father obviously cared for his sister, and he knew that by transitive property of parental love and affection, probably cared for him too. But by this point in his life, he'd been let down so many times by the man, seeing his sister let down even more by the man for how highly she regarded him, and had seen his mother hurt in every way a woman could be hurt by a husband. Alvaro knew there had to be some reason Faustina loved the man so, was so forgiving of his transgressions, but couldn't find whatever it was in himself. He slammed his hand on the horn and held it down until he saw his father and sister share a look like they had a secret about him. When did they put the stick in your ass about getting to school on time? Because I know you've made me late more times than I can count, Faustina said upon entering the car. Let's just go, Alvaro said. He knew she wanted to defend their father just as much as he wanted to disparage the man, but neither of them had the strength or any kind of actual defensible argument to mount. So they sat on their sides of the car, Faustina holding tight to the steering wheel, like if she'd let go, she'd fall out of the car, and Alvaro holding onto his base like a shield in battle. See you after lunch, Faustina offered when they pulled up to school. Her speaking up first let Alvaro know that Faustina felt her loyalty to their father to be at least a little more shameful than she found her brother's shitty petulance at the same thing to be. It showed that she felt that way, but that didn't mean Alvaro felt any less guilty for putting her in the middle of his animosity and her love for their father. Yeah, if not, I'll see you later tonight. Alvaro flashed his sister a smile. Sorry about all the honking. She shrugged and walked toward the main entrance of the school. 3 family TVs, 2 DVD players, countless VCRs from when they got real cheap after DVD players themselves had gotten cheap, 3 bikes, 2 of Alvaro's, 1 of Faustina's, and a window unit AC. Jose Alvaro Gonzalez Sr. had stolen each of these from his family over the years during his brief returns home. The first couple of times, Alvaro's mom had played it off like their homes had been broken into. Alvaro bought it. But when she tried the third time, the first time Alvaro's bike was taken, the second time Faustina's was too. Alvaro could see a new kind of angry disappointment in his sister's eyes. This was before they lost the house, before the endless march from motel to apartment to trailer to motel to crashing on one of Mom's cousin's houses that had only recently ended when she got a job at HEB and the second one at Sonic, and then the final stabilizing factor, when Faustina had gotten old enough to get a job herself and bring home money that a partner otherwise would have. I'm sorry, mija. We'll get you another one when I get some money, their mom had said. There's no point in crying now. I know, Mom. Crying won't bring it back, Faustina said, repeating the line their mother threw at so much loss, like trying to fight a house fire with a water gun. But next time Dad shows up, maybe I'll just lock my bike in my bedroom. Faustina! Their mother shouted, but Faustina was already halfway to her room. Or you know what, just don't buy me a bike again, then no one can steal it. At the sound of the door slamming, Ninfa Gonzalez fell to the floor crying. This was the first time Alvaro had put together the timing of the burglaries that had seemed to plague the family any time his father came around. He felt stupid for not having put it together before then. The house had never actually been broken into. No broken glass, no kicked in doors. It had all just been his father, taking things to sell for Alvaro still didn't know what, and his mother lying to protect him. Ninfa had always been a mystery to her son, one he didn't bother trying to figure out by asking questions of her. She was just always too busy, always too tired. She was always just barely handling whatever crisis life had put them in. Alvaro knew this even before they had lost the house, before his father was more permanently gone. She was forever on the phone with her mother, or her sister, or her girlfriends, whispering in Spanish, a language she and Joe hadn't taught the kids, seemingly for the purpose of keeping it as a language in which to panic in their presence without giving up just how bad any of it ever was. Looking at his mother, there on her knees, having simply given up on her tears in the face of one of the plates she was constantly spinning crashing down, Alvaro understood that every time she'd lied to them, she'd done so to protect them from the truth about who their father was, about how much she owed to whomever, about why they had to pack up their clothes into trash bags and get out of the house. Alvaro would always come to remember as his childhood home and into the car that she would drive around Corpus thinking of what their next move might be before pulling into the tally-ho off Leopard, where she would tell the kids to keep their eyes forward so they didn't see the obviously fucked up druggies posted up, sitting with their backs on the walls of the rooms, or the prostitutes leaning out of the slit open windows on the short walk from the car to the room that smelled like burnt plastic and Brillo pad and poison, and in which she would hold on to her children, her only real home, until they fell asleep, when she would finally let herself sob so hard her son would wake up but not open his eyes, because without knowing it, he'd learned to lie to protect her too. The day when their bikes were stolen, Alvaro walked away from his mother crying on the living room floor. He was half ignoring her tears, pretending like they didn't exist, like he would when everything else would fall apart, and half walking away without comforting her so he could stew in his newfound anger toward his father, who had, he had just realized, made her cry, just like he'd made her cry almost every time before then. A childish part of Alvaro died that day, just like the one that died when he learned that Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy weren't real. Another myth he believed in had been proven false. Parents are not perfect. They aren't here just for you. Sometimes dads steal, sometimes moms lie. Always, you just have to take it. Always, tears won't bring anything back, and eventually you stop crying because what's the point? Crying won't bring back what you lost, and it sure won't make the losing stop. Thank you.